false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
As the world watches and listens in horror, the peaceful pro-democracy demonstration in China comes to a violent and bloody end.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Wolves hiding nearby, whispering do or die around me. You say your last good night while I get
There is another very important phase of warfare. It has as its target not the body, but the mind of the enemy.
The target of psychological warfare is against the enemy's mind.
It is words and ideas.
The ammunition used by Psywar.
Its mission is to influence the thoughts of the enemy soldier, and at the same time
is expected and encouraged to study foreign languages and the social sciences such as history, economics, and sociology. He must have a broad and sympathetic understanding of all phases of human experience.
gripping at my skin, the walls of night closing.
But the use of this force as an integral part of combat has now taken on new form.
As I wait to say my last goodbye.
These are the Psywar soldiers.
Resolute Exposure is a social media platform. Almost all content on Resolute Exposure is created by citizen journalists. I share content created by citizen journalists who I believe to be the best at finding facts buried deep into the abyss, or outlets who I believe to be best for verifiable information. We have to operate within their system, and we only have the information that they allow us to have. These citizen journalists who nerd out on fact-finding missions and then add their opinion to better inform me to make the best choice for me in this war of narratives is Resolute. This information war is a battle for your mind and ultimately compliance. While mainstream media dismisses social platforms as mere echo chambers for fake news, independent spaces like this prove that shared content and live dialogue actually foster deeper critical thinking. So, I am excited to share the content in hopes you'll turn off mainstream media, who I believe is just a version of entertainment. So again, welcome to Resolute Exposure. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of the host, producers, or any affiliated organization. This podcast may include sensitive discussion related to topics such as child protection, abuse, and criminal behavior. The content is intended for informational, educational, and awareness purposes only, does not constitute legal, medical, or professional advice. Any reference to individuals, cases, or events are based on personal perspective, professional experience, or publicly available information and should not be interpreted as statements of fact regarding any specific person or situation. The host, speakers, and producers disclaim any liability for actions taken by listeners based on the content of this podcast. Listeners are encouraged to seek qualified professional guidance for their specific circumstances. Listeners' discretion is advised. All individuals are presumed innocent unless proven guilty in a court of law. All right. Welcome, folks. Welcome to Caught Up, episode 134. It's the topic is they're really trying to save the system. It's been something that's been going on for a long, long time. I think they see the writing on the wall, so to speak, and the old system is kind of getting its little ass beat at the moment. So, anyway, welcome. It's Friday night. It's not the normal Thursday that I normally do this, and we let's see, we got a little bit going on. Scrappy Dogs in the Rumble chat and late night ramblings. Not sure who that is, but welcome. And we're on Facebook, also YouTube. But anyhow, Thursday is normally when I do the old Caught Up special, not on Fridays. But my son, who is in the Army, was leaving late Thursday night, Friday morning, really, early Friday morning. And so I went over and spent a couple more hours with him after work to send them off. So, and I believe they made it home safe. I talked to him a few hours ago, and they were just a few hours away from where he was headed to. So, anyway, by the time I got here, it was past 8 o'clock. So it was probably just best to put that portion of the show off till to today. And so that's what I did. A lot going on in Blount County. If you're not familiar with Blount County, Tennessee, interesting things that were going on there. We'll talk about more of that on Tuesday on Blount County Breakdown. But some interesting thing with this old Pellissippi Project extension, Pellissippi Parkway extension project. So we talked about it last Tuesday. I guess yesterday's just before their commission meeting, the mayor removed it from the agenda or however that works, but haven't been I don't know, I haven't been on Facebook as much today to try to see what was going on. I'll catch that up tomorrow morning. So what I wanted to do today was finish the stuff that I was talking about last Thursday, which was about the 26 NDS, our military, the bases that we have scattered all around the world. The number ranges in like 750. Hey, look, there's real Ed Reno's in the house too. So appreciate it, guys. I'm going to whore for likes. If you don't mind, hit the like. Hit it on Facebook and YouTube if you don't care. Maybe it helps push things up a little bit. But anyway, back to what I was talking about, which was this realignment that's going on, this shift that's going on, especially within our country and across the world. People don't always believe that we play a bigger role in the world than what we do, but obviously we do. We absolutely play a bigger role. I'm talking about our country as a whole. I mean, that's apparent with Trump. That was in, our president was in China for the last couple of days. The big fat welcome that they gave to him, which is rolling out the red carpet and all the pageantry that came with that. Country like China playing, what do they call it? I guess that would just be optics, right? Everything that we saw over the last couple of days are optics. Everything that they tell us on the news that's been discussed or being discussed behind closed doors has probably already been finished. They're just being finalized now, in my opinion, and probably talking about what is going on next in the upcoming agenda as far as removing the old guard. I have a difference of opinion. I think that um, we have what do they call that? We have um, a good twin, evil twin, as Chris Paul would call it. We have that in America. They have it in Russia. They have it in China, and I think we're exposing the evil twin for what it is, and really trying to look there. Danny Else is on Facebook. What's up? But I think there's a little bit of an alliance, just my opinion, based off of the things that we have seen play out over the last 10 years, I guess, um, where the old guard is being removed. Old guard, deep state, new world order. Let's see what else. Uniparty, global elites, whatever name you want to put on. I think that that style, that system of that system that they're trying to save is drowning, and so and they're trying to save themselves from drowning, and but I think President Trump gets ahead of some of the things narratively, and sort of navigates it through um, media, social media accounts, mainstream media, all the big three-letter agencies that are out there on the public airwaves or paid airwaves if you got cable. But anyway, I think that that style of system is going to go. It's going away, but it ain't going to happen fast enough. It's not going to happen fast enough for any of us right here that's listening, watching, or living in what's going on right now with the reality of gas being $4.30 a gallon. If that's where it's at in your neck of the woods, because that's where it's at my neck of the woods. Any oil-based petroleum type stuff is raised, which means any type of packaging that you get in a product that you buy, all those things have gotten higher economically in this country, and I don't know if there's really an end to sight that for that at the moment. I know we hear that once this is done with Iran, these prices will lower as far as gas goes. But we've been singing since the high heaven that almost all of the oil, actually all of that's going on over there in the Middle East, has nothing to do with the United States of America. We get none of it, other than what we consume from China and what China uses to make their oil-based products that they um, uh, ship over here and fill all the stores with. Beyond that, we play no role in what's going on with that over there. That's a stranglehold on their economies over there. Iran's, Korea's, China's, those nations over there. Maybe the France's and in the United Kingdoms of the world over there. You know what I mean? Those are the ones that are benefiting or would benefit from the Strait of Hormuz being opened and things playing out as they would, which is just basically um, you got somebody that wants to be a superpower and doing their best to keep control of what's going on over there. And I don't have an opinion about what's good or bad or how to handle that right or wrong when it comes to Iran at the moment. But anyhow, um, you can get off. I mean, you can lose focus on what I'm talking. I can anyway. So I want to get back to this thing that I wrote, and then there's a couple clips, from DEFCON Zero that talks some stuff about these things specifically. He actually does a fantastic job of putting it in a timeline as he goes over it, which is really neat. And so I'll play that in a little bit. But I wanted to talk a little bit about like this I don't know what the right word is for it. It's not an article. It was for me. Um, is what it was. Man, okay. So it says the shift in strategy seen in the 2026 National Defensive Strategy, NDS, and the current administration's foreign policy is at the core a move to consolidate decision making power within the executive branch and away from the consensus driven, committee led process that has characterized Washington for decades. It's what I'm talking about right there. This old guard, deep state, uniparty, whatever name or letter they got beside their name, RD or I, to me makes no damn difference um, because they all play in that world there. It says if we view the old guard as the network of lobbyists, institutionalists, and legislative committees that have historically managed the rule based order, the current strategy disrupts that layer through several specific mechanisms. These mechanisms, from the committee consensus to executive directive, the traditional establishment approach relies on slow, bureaucratic processes, committees, international summits, and years of negotiations, which create ample space for lobbying and influence peddling. And we have lived in that my entire life. So I'll be 52 soon, and I can tell you with confidence that style, that old World War II way of thinking, um, you know, is gone. The old guard, you know. It says the disruptor. Remember the disruptor? The disruptor by using direct. I mean, I wish I could have found the clip. I probably should have, where it talked about the disruptor, President Trump talking about the disruptor. Remember, he used the disruptor, the discombobulator. That's what it was. The discombobulator. Maybe that's what they should have named that. Anyway, the disruptor, by using direct, decisive actions such as the threat to withdraw troops from Germany, Italy, and Spain, the administration creates fiat accompli scenarios. When the president acts via executive posture, it forces Congress to react to a situation already in motion rather than setting the policy themselves. Did you hear that? It forces Congress to react to the situation already in motion. Um, because we all know Congress does a whole lot of nothing. Um, they get up there and get their sound bites. I mean, look at Tim Burchett. He's on all kinds of podcasts. He's been on DEFCON Zero. He's fixing to be on John Harold's The Daily Herald. I think it's going to air on Monday. I've tried to reach out to him once through email, through his channels or whatever, to get him to come on our show since he is our Congress in our district, local to us. But they got him on there to talk about the aliens. The aliens, you know what I mean? With everything that's going on in the world and in our country, they're going to dingle this little fucking lure called aliens, like an Alex Jones type of thing. You know what I mean? Which drives me absolutely bananas, but they got Tim Burchett on these podcasts of mine. They think he's just like, which questions, it makes me question them a little bit, um, aliens. I want to talk to him about fraud. I want to talk to him about um, the COVID-19 stuff. I want to talk to him about he made statements that he was um, how did he say it? Anyway, to rid the world of pedophiles. And then I live in a county where between the sheriff, which is his good buddy, and the black robes and the DA, because these teachers that have prominent names in our county get fantastic plea deals and all this other stuff. But the man that's in Congress that represents my district talks about all these things he's going to do, does none of the things in this district that he ever talks about in his little sound bites with this Carhartt jacket on because he's for the working man, and he's so full of fucking shit. So Danny says China is looking to buy oil from Alaska very soon, is what I hear, and I've heard that too. And power move from the Prez if that happens, which is very true. And let's see, James Richards in the house, and he's home. Looks like he's released from UT today. Long road to recovery. Good job, James. Glad to hear that. And then Scrappy Dog says that's called an op-ed, opinion editorial. He must be talking about my little article that I had created. That's another thing. AI. You know, when they made the car, what did it do? It speeded up transportation, right? Instead of having one horse and a carriage, you had a car that had, I don't know, back in the time cars came out, maybe it had 5 or 10 horses. So it could go that much faster. And so it sped up travel. And what do we have now? We have planes, we have fancy ass automobiles, motorcycles, everything else, right? Okay, so I have AI. And what's AI do for Brian Riley? AI speeds up all the research that Brian needs. All Brian has to do is ask the right questions and then verify the information that's given to me. And if it's not correct, you can tell AI that it's not correct. You can actually show it where it isn't correct, and it will correct that and even let you know that it has corrected that. So I like the AI quite a bit, and I use it, and I appreciate that, Scrappy Dog, with the opinion editorial. So this disruptor, right? It forces Congress to react to a situation already in motion rather than setting the policy themselves. This fundamentally minimizes the consolation phase, consolation phase, where lobbyists exert the most influence, replacing the ideology alliance with transactional diplomacy. For decades, the foreign establishment justified military and economic commitments through the language of global values, democratic norms, and mutual protection. This created a massive ecosystem of think tanks. What do you think? The Event 201 and all these other things came from was these very, very fancy think tanks and NGOs and defense contractors that thrived on maintaining these expensive international commitments. Now, those in office for Brian Riley and them, um, regardless of whatever, um, hang on one second, guys. One second. Hang on one second. Sorry, guys. I had technology that's trying to die on me here, so I had to improvise. Okay, so anyway, where was that? Let's see. Ecosystems of the think tanks. Oh, democratic norms. Since when was our elected officials, like Congress and Senate, when did we give them the authority that it was okay to travel to other countries to use our form of democracy, which is actually a republic if you can keep it, that belongs to any of the rest of them? It doesn't. We didn't give them that authority. We they choose to take that authority is what happens. So these NGOs, which are non-governmental organizations, which are a bunch of money laundering things, all these billions of dollars that come in, that get funneled out, um, comes back through the NGOs, and we know this to be true. Defense contractors that thrived on maintaining expensive international commitments, talking about theaters, wars, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? So, the disruptor. The new strategy redefines security as a commodity, a service that allies must pay for through policy alignment, right? By explicitly linking U.S. military presence to specific ally behaviors, like supporting U.S. actions against Iran. The administration removes the ideological justification that lobbyists previously used to demand permanent, unconditional funding. He removes it. Congress does nothing. Nothing. Not a thing. And we're supposed to go through. Look at it this way, and I'll just keep on going. Economic, because I'm going to get ahead of myself, is what's going to happen. Economic decoupling and near shoring. Lobbying dollars often follow the money. As long as the U.S. economy was tied to global supply chains and massive internal investments, the global elite had a natural hold on policy. The disruptor, by pivoting toward flexible realism and prioritizing the Western Hemisphere, the strategy attempts to shrink the U.S. economic footprint in favor of regional trade and domestic manufacturing. If the strategic focus shifts away from global policing, the financial incentives for the lobbying network that supports that global presence diminishes. In theory, the influence towards domestic industrial sectors rather than those focused on foreign infrastructure. And that's exactly what they do. Oh, that's exactly what they do. Let's see. Let's see. Uh, Oh, Scrappy Dog says that they aren't our representatives. They are LLCs that do the bidding of the corporate U.S. and subcontractors. That's a fantastic way to say that. I say all the time that these people are not leaders. They're not anything. They are supposed to represent us. And then Scrappy Dog comes up with they aren't our representatives. They are LLCs. That is amazing, and that is exactly what they are. Bypassing gatekeepers. Do we know what gatekeepers are? We had a couple weeks back with our primaries going on. We saw a lot of gatekeepers that did the work for, I don't know, like people run for mayor and commissioners and stuff like that. They came out of the woodwork with all their anonymous names and all their fake accounts, and they attacked people that were on there in social media like, you can't talk about my guy running for mayor. He was excellent at this as a commissioner. I mean, just wow. Gatekeepers bypassing them. And that's exactly what you should remember. The establishment, there's another fancy word, has historically acted as a gatekeeper of information using traditional media and institutional channels to frame what is possible in foreign policy. The disruptor to this, the administrator's use of direct communication, such as social media posts. You want to know what Trump's doing? You should follow him on Truth. Doesn't mean you need to believe everything he posts on there. You just got to learn how to decipher what part we're supposed to try to understand and what part's meant for somebody else. And that's not always easy or fun. But over time, some of those things seem to work out the way we kind of try to predict, right? We see signs of something that may be heading in that direction based off of what we saw previously. How this is the past proves future, future proves past, all that good stuff like that. So let's see. He says James says he has a good traffic question. He heard Blount County didn't have school buses this afternoon. Anything about it? No, I was off Facebook today pretty much. And yeah, we can talk about that stuff on Tuesday, though, when it comes to Blount County. And then Danny says he likes Tim Burchett compared to the others in Congress. Still a politician, unfortunately, but he does need to do more than talk about East Tennessee's, right? ETs? Oh, ETs. He's talking about aliens. Yeah, that's exactly right. All right. It says calling out foreign leaders directly bypasses the middlemen in the media and the legislative committees. By speaking directly to the electorate, the administration builds a public mandate that can be used to pressure Congress. That's why I say Trump is brilliant. People don't always like when I say he exposes things, and sometimes these exposures take a little while, and it affects people differently, right? But what happens when things get exposed? What happens? The public sees it, and what do? They get off their ass and write a letter to Congress, or make a phone call, or send an email, or do something. Maybe show up at their office if they're in their hometown or something like that. You know what I mean? And see if they can't get something. What's going on. That's the difference right there, right? Because it bypasses, or because bypassing the middleman, we pressure Congress, right? Trump has showed us many levels of stuff. Elections, how they are manipulated. What else? The fraud in the country. My whole life, I heard people around the dinner table, family reunion, stuff like that, talk about all the fraud in the country. But then when we see it get exposed, they're just like, not so sure I believe all that, when it's right there, front and center. Elections, the fraud that's happening in Medicare, the fraud that's happening in daycare, the fraud that's happening everywhere, education, defense, space. The fraud is everywhere. Everywhere. We are the wealthiest nation in the world. We are the number one consumer in the world. The fraud is everywhere. Through the NGOs, through the lobbyists, through think tanks, through your local elections, through all of that. You know what I'm saying? Scrappy Dog says Tim Burchett sucking Marsha Blackburn's ass to get his appointment of her office, and that could be very true. Not voting for her either. So, all right. When a senator or representative feels the pressure of their own constituents, they are less likely to follow the foreign establishment's party line. It's amazing what happens when the American public wakes up, and not just every 4 years. You got to stop waking up when it's a presidential election. You need to be awake every damn day of the week. Find some balance in your life, obviously, you know what I mean? But make sure that you're paying attention to what's going on to your politics locally, your politics in your state. The state of Tennessee legislators, they suck. They just introduce bills and whatever to that have. We didn't even ask for these things. We didn't even ask for them. But somehow the state of Tennessee, the legislators, they just come up with these, these fancy little bills, and then, they get passed down, and we're just like, what the crap, man? So we gotta start showing up It's all good, Kim. We see you there. Got to start showing up just more than just presidential elections. And I'm not talking about just Blount County. I'm talking about as a country. The remaining hurdles, the power of the purse. While the strategy attempts to bypass the foreign establishments, it does not eliminate it entirely. The U.S. system, Congress still controls the power of the purse. But they only use it when Trump's in office. Other than that, there is no control over the power of the purse. If I was allowed to operate my home the way the Congress operates our country financially, I wouldn't have a home. The most significant battleground remains the defensive budget. Remember, we talked about it's about $50 to $80 billion. Even if the president shifts the posture of the military, Congress has to authorize the funds for it. The old guard is currently focusing its efforts on utilizing budgets, reconciliation on defense appropriations, debate and requirements that force the military to maintain its current global footprint, regardless of the administration's stated goals. If you don't agree with the 2026 National Defense Strategy, well, then you're still part of the old guard, that old way of thinking, that old World War II bullshit out there. In short, the strategy is an attempt to re-centralize power in the White House. It removes the layers of influence by rendering the traditional bureaucratic census irrelevant. But it remains a high-stakes tug-of-war. This effectiveness is the removal. The effectiveness of this removal depends on the administration's ability to maintain the public pressure and withstand the pushback from the legislative branches that rely on that status quo. He's talking about these judges that appeal everything to the reflective pool in D.C. because of the paint or whatever the crap that they're doing. If Trump's cleaning up D.C. because those people that claim that they were put in positions to do that by the voting base aren't, I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is judges and these action committees and these whatever else that are allowed to come in and sue him that have no authority whatsoever over the executive branch. But they're allowed to. So, I don't wonder, I really know that I want to believe that President Trump is doing some things for the country that get us closer to the Constitution, closer to the way that the founders were, hopefully believing that it could work out to be 250 years later. But he has to remove all these safeguards that are put in place by the very people that we ran the hell out of here in the late 1700s. Somehow they got their little fingers and tentacles right back into the politics that run the United States of America. And they've been doing it for years and years and years. In the 70s, who got rid of the gold standard? They started printing money. Central bank is where? London. United Kingdom. Just saying. Whether the current administration's actions represent a return to the founders' constitutional intent is one of the most significant constitutional debates of 26 because the founders themselves were deeply divided on the balance between executive strength and legislative deliberation. Constitutionalism is interpreted differently by various factions. And now this is the part of the op-ed here that talks about the executive branch overstepping its constitutional authority unless the other two branches of government are illegitimate. Right? Oh, Scrappy Jog says he needs to tell these judges what Andrew Jackson told the Supreme Court and try to uphold your ruling. Exactly. To evaluate whether the administration is returning to the founders' model or fundamentally altering it, see, one must look at the two competing definitions of constitutional government at play. The argument for a return to constitutional principles. Supporters of the administration's current approach argue that the U.S. has drifted away from the founders' design in several ways, and that the administration is working to correct this. Enumerated powers versus administrative state. The founders intended for the federal government to have limited, specific, enumerated powers. Over the 20th and early 21st centuries, the power to make laws was increasingly delegated to unelected agencies, the administrative state. Fact. By using executive power to reclaim control over these agencies and shift foreign policy unilaterally, supporters argue the administration is restoring accountability to elected president rather than allowing policy to be run by unaccountable bureaucracy and industry lobbyists. I would agree with that. The whole of a nation mandate. The founders, specifically in Federalist number 70, argued for a strong, energetic executive. Supporters contend that because the president is the only official elected by the entire country, using executive authority to bypass legislative gridlock is the most democratic and constitutional way to enact the will of the people, which they argue is currently being blocked by a foreign establishment in Congress. That, my friends, is true. National sovereignty. The founders were wary of foreign entanglements, a theme in Washington's farewell address. From this perspective, the shift away from the globalist multilateral institutions toward a Western Hemisphere first defense strategy is a direct return to a more traditional, sovereignty-focused American foreign policy. Makes sense? The shift away from globalist, multilateral institutions toward a Western Hemisphere first defense strategy is a direct return to a more traditional, sovereignty focused American foreign policy. It's more of what the founders wanted. 2, the argument that bypasses the constitutional design, right? Critics, including many constitutional scholars, argue that the administration's methods are actually at odds with the specific mechanism of the founders designed to prevent tyranny, the separation of powers, legislative supremacy. The founders were terrified of an executive overreach, monarchy, which is what they keep coming up with. No kings, right? Right. What was the No Kings protests? But when the fucking King of England came over, what did they do? They cheered him on. They protested no kings. But when an actual king showed up, because the president's not a king, he's elected by the people, supposedly. The power of the purse. Article 1, Section 9 of Constitution explicitly grants Congress control of the Treasury, which they still have. And lobbying as redress of grievances. While lobbying is often criticized as corrupt, it is rooted in the First Amendment right to petition the government for redress of grievances. So the fundamental tension, the debate essentially boils down to this. If you believe the founders prioritized energy in the executive to ensure nations can act decisively in the face of threats, then this administration's move to bypass Congress is a return to a robust constitutional vision of leadership. Or if you believe the founders prioritized institutional checks, that the process is the purpose, then the administration's move to consolidate power is a departure from the constitutional design, regardless of whether the goals of that power are nationalists or internationalists. It begs the question, right? Let's see. The question I was trying to get to with all of this was, if Congress and Senate are truly illegitimate, they're not legally elected officials, and the president, who has access to all information in the world, he is the most informed man. Even Barack Obama, even old dummy Joe Biden, the rest of them, they have more access to information than anybody. Well, he knows if they're truly elected or they're not. He knows if they truly tried to subvert the Constitution or not. And based off of his first 4 years, his devolved 4 years, and his first year and so many months, there's indicators out there that would show that these things that are being played out that we see today are based off of that design right there. It says the founder's vision of the people's voice. Your premise suggests that if Congress is not representing the people, the president must step in to inform them and act on their behalf. However, the founder's original design was quite different. Congress as the primary engine. The founders, particularly the authors of the Federalist Papers, viewed the legislative branch as direct voice of the people. Problem is, Scrappy Dog says, is 95% of Congress and Senate is owned by Israel. That I agree. They're owned by foreign entities. Foreign, which would make them traitors. And what does the Constitution say about a civil servant that was elected into position by we the people when they are considered tyrannical or traitors? There is a remedy to resolve that, and no one likes that answer. They get removed. So it says the legislative process is a check. They intentionally made the legislative process slow and deliberate, which I agree. But that's when it comes to laws. Laws were supposed to be argued. They were supposed to be deliberate debates. See, we've gotten away from debates. Even in the county that I live in, they went to these meet and greets and coffee and calls over debates. Debates are healthy. It's what gets us to the root of the issue. And while two or more people are debating over what they believe is the best view of their campaign or whatever it may be, during that dialogue and all that conversation, questions arise from it. And if there's an audience, that would be we the people. And if we can watch them deliberate and follow this legislative process when it comes to passing laws, well, I'm all for that. But that's not what they do. They sit in their offices and they have a staff of hundreds or 100 or in that area of people. Those people are the ones that do all the work. Then they hand over like this conclusion to the so-called representative that we put into office, and well, that's what he goes, or that's what she does. And so we have to get away from that. That's not how this works. We put them in place to debate policy and law, not to push it off on 75 staff that you got over here to come up with a conclusion that fits something that you can present on the floor. No. They're supposed to argue. They're supposed to debate. They're supposed to. We need to erect gallows in the square of D.C. Look, I've said that many times. If they did that publicly, you were caught, you were tried, you were found guilty for treason, and then they publicly executed you. Could you imagine what it would do? It would make people think twice about running for office, or running for office illegitimately, or running for office to get rich, or all that stuff. I'm against, I'll just go ahead and say it. What is it? It's that degree, science, political science, history, and all that. I'm all for that. But political science majors, they go to college for 4 years and they're taught how to subvert the system, the Constitution, to manipulate it in ways to make themselves extremely wealthy off the backs of the taxpayer. And so that should be outlawed, because political science major goes into politics for one reason: as a career, to retire. And that's not where politics were supposed to be. You were supposed to be in the public and then run for civil service, get elected, and after a period of time, remove yourself from civil service and go back into the public again. That way you knew the temperature of the country or the county or the state in which you were elected to represent. But that's not how it works today. They don't know the temperature of the country because they know the temperature of the LLCs in which they do. So the executive order, tool for instrument of power, the EO, the executive order. I'm not a fan of it. But you have to use the tools in which they give you to defeat them. And they love the executive orders. And so, hey, look, Ed's on, he's on Facebook now. Ed, did you go to, just let me see here. I bet he went to YouTube too, didn't you? Nope. Nopey. All right. Executive orders. The modern use of the executive orders to drive major policy shifts is a development that many constitutional scholars argue deviates from the founders' intent, which I agree. The broken system argument. There is a powerful counter argument that supports my view: necessity and the energetic executive. Federalist number 70, Alexander Hamilton argued that an energetic executive to handle crisis and ensure the government could act decisively. If one believes that Congress is so corrupt by lobbying the old guard establishment, as I mentioned, that is structurally incapable of representing the people, then an energetic executive acting unilaterally may be seen not as an overreach, but as the only way to preserve the republic's survival. That's what I see when I look out there and I watch these multimedia conglomerates, when I see this social media tycoons and all their, these podcasters, all the, like Timcast and Benny Johnson and all of them guys out there that during those years when they were censoring everybody, they weren't censored. And why were they not censored? They weren't censored because they were following the narrative and they were being paid handsomely for it. But people like us, people like me, people like the podcast that I listen to, people in my family that said the opposite about what was going on, they censored you. If you tried to put it on Facebook, they did all these things to make sure that they stuck your ass in timeout like you were some little kid that was being disruptive in a class. We were taught to question. I was taught to question. I was taught to question. I was taught to to believe that the government corrupts absolutely, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? No. This is right. Redress and grievances. Proponents of this view argue that if the traditional legislative path is blocked, the president, as the only nationally elected official, has a mandate to act as the direct representative of the people to force the government back to a constitutional path. That is exactly where we are. The problem is the people aren't there yet. That's the problem. The people aren't there yet. Right there. The president is elected by the country. Congress and Senate is elected by their states. I'm not trying to get away from the Constitution, but if I am to believe that the 100 senators and what is it, the 400 and well, we'll just say almost 500 congressmen that are up there are all illegitimate, and that includes our precious little Tim Burchett. Illegitimate. And if they're illegitimate, then only the nationally elected official has a mandate to act as a direct representative of the people to force the government back to the constitutional path. I'm tired of Congress not doing shit. And I'm so happy that my president, Donald Trump, pushes them to madness. The same with the Senate, pushes them to madness. To watch how they act, the AOCs and the Ilham Omars and all of them, how they are. It's exposing what they are. It is a world of cast of characters that resembles Hunger Games. The people, my whole entire life, Iran, it's been a pain in the ass. With every single president that's come through, Iran's done something. They've always pushing the limits, always doing something. Somehow we get stuck in a war over there with Iraq and Afghanistan because, these planes ran into these towers in New York City, right? Iran has always been the problem. Not a single president has come through. And as a matter of fact, the only black president that supposedly was elected, if that is real, gave them pallets of cash. The black guy. The one that wants reparations. What the hell did we owe Iran? I owe Iran absolutely nothing. My generation owes Iran nothing except for a big old ass kicking. My kids owe Iran nothing. My grandkids owe Iran nothing. Nothing. So, is the president acting in the best interest of the people when it was time to put a cap on Iran? As of right now, yes. The way it all began, I'm not sure. I understand why, but I wasn't sure we were going to get ourselves into another major conflict. I'm not condoning war, but I understand. That's what the people voted for. Immigration and the border. Congress isn't acting. Neither is Senate. And as a matter of fact, they're actually stopping the agencies, which I'm not a fan of agencies either. ICE, ATF, CIA, the FBI, all these things. I think it's too much government. It needs to be dwindled down. I believe that President Trump believes that too. How do you fix that? You have to fix the shit that's going on at the border. How do we fix the shit going on at the border? Did the people not ask Congress and Senate to do to do their jobs, their duty, what they upheld? I mean, they take an oath. And no, they didn't. So, has a mandate to act as the direct representative of the people to force the government back to a constitutional path. If Congress is not going to take care of the border, if they're not going to take care of that, the Senate, they're not going to pass common sense laws that protect the American public from whatever the hell's going on down there at the border, then yes, he has the authority to do that based on, guess who? We the people. We asked for that, right? We asked for better infrastructure. We asked for a better economy. We asked for no more foreign wars. We asked for all these things. And at the moment, the biggest part of that's going down right now. Can you imagine being the one guy in D.C. that's playing all these chess games out here? He's playing with Congress. They all hate him. They don't like him. To beat it all, he was a Democrat before he ever ran for president. And guess what? When he won their primary, they wouldn't accept him. Came a Republican, right? Because you got to pick a letter, right? I mean, come on. Congress, Senate is not doing their job on a federal level. And so, President Trump has the mandate to act as a direct representative of the people to force the government back to as constitutional as possible. If you look up what they're supposed to do, you look up what Congress's job is supposed to do, and I forget what it's called. It's slipped my mind at the moment. What the president's job is supposed to do for the country. You'll be amazed that they got their hands in everything that they're not supposed to do. But up until Trump, they had a president that was right there doing the same thing. Whether it was Bush or Clinton or Obama or the other Bush or whatever. You may have Reagan that wasn't a part of that, but when he got shot at, I think he just wanted to run off into the sunset and retire, which I don't blame him. But Trump's been shot once, attempted 2 more times after that. He's still out here doing the same thing that maybe Kennedy started way back then. Article 1, Section 15 and 16, the militia is the ultimate law enforcement as well as the military. That is absolute fact. It talks about a standing army is not good. The state should not have one. The federal government should not have one. No. Let's see. Jason Payne's in there. OPEC makes the rules when it comes to gas. Yes, they do. Let's see. He says 85% of the stuff we use are products of oil. Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. But we get none of that from Iran. That's somebody else's issue out there. That's not ours. I need you to remember that the president is acting as the mandate of the people. Conclusion, this part says, the founder's intent regarding a government where the legislator fails to represent the people was almost always electoral revolution, voting the representative out. That does not happen anymore. Ask the people in Blount County about voting representatives out, how that works. It doesn't work at a local level, doesn't work at a state level, doesn't work at a federal level. It doesn't. That either the people don't show up, or if the people do show up in masses, they find ways to manipulate the count. It's all fact. Or in extreme cases, constitutional amendments. They were deeply suspicious of giving the executive power to inform the people by bypassing the established lawmaking process. And as they feared this would inevitably lead to the very tyranny that they had just fought a war to escape. Ultimately, this is a high stake test of the Constitution. And that's exactly what Trump's doing, which I think is brilliant. He is testing. He is pushing everything in the gray area. He's getting these Supreme Courts involved in ways that they haven't been, or again, in things that they shouldn't have been. If the system is working, this administration's actions seem as an overreach. But if the system is truly broken, these actions are viewed by many as the only remaining path to we the people. And I'll leave you with that one right there. Right? Is that correct? If the system is working, this administration's actions is seen as an overreach. But if the system is broken, then it's the only way, the only remaining path to we the people. Let me see, because I want to get to the part where okay. The courts and the legislative. Watch this. This is the last of my op-ed, and then I'll get into the clips that I got for a moment. It says a topic of intense study in political science. Remember that word, political science? Law and history. The idea that a divergence between the will of the people and the actions of the court and legislators leads to a subversion of the Constitution is not a fringe view. It is a central pillar of debate regarding the health of the republic. Is that not where we are? If you guys don't mind, hit the like button. Hit the like button on Rumble. Hit the like button on Facebook. And hit the like button on YouTube if you don't mind. I'm whoring for likes. When the citizens feel that the institutions designed to protect the Constitution are instead being used to reshape it without their consent, it creates a crisis of legitimacy. Here is an analysis how this dynamic is often framed by critics and constitutional scholars. The judicial pipeline and the will of the people. The U.S. judiciary is structurally designed to be insulated from the passions of the people. Article 3, judges serve for life, specifically so they don't have to worry about their next election. However, the process of selecting those judges has evolved into a highly politicized mechanism. Again, it's the machine. Let's see. We have OPEC. We have let OPEC become what they are. Let's see. Ed says OPEC would shrivel up if it and blow away. We have so much oil and gas right now. I think was it the UAE and one other country over there has withdrawn from OPEC, which is just the beginning. So if we remove ourselves from OPEC and NATO and a few other things, we do just exactly what the 26 NDS is talking about. Those people that we claim to be our allies all of a sudden have to pony up and figure out how to protect their nations until it is invaded. Once it's invaded, then can they afford the military of the United States based on the fact, would it be a humanitarian type of thing or a kinetic type of thing? So, yes. So James says, you mean my vote didn't count? Makes me want my gas money back. Everything I do seems to be a waste of time standing up to the overseers of corruption. It's not really a waste of time, though, James. And no, your vote counts. We have to go through the motions. Not everybody agrees with this part that I say it this way. I believe that votes are stolen or manipulated through many, many, many different types of illegal actions, we'll just say. So we have to show up through the process to make this happen, so that if there's an audit or something gets canvassed or something like that, then we have that as a backup. Although, again, there's many broken things about the backup part of the system as well. So I want to believe that the system that was designed to run this country works, and it needs to be tweaked depending on technology. I'm not talking about our Constitution, just talking about the system itself. Right now, voting can be manipulated through internet and all kinds of other areas. So we have to find mechanisms to make it safe. And if those people who claim to be elected are against voting in the mechanisms that we ask for, then yeah, they have to go. So no, man, everything you do matters, James. Everything you do matters. Matters to somebody. All right. Ideological vetting. Critics argue that the process has shifted from selecting jurists based on legal acronym to rigorous litmus test of ideology. If a judge is chosen primarily to ensure specific policy outcomes, the court becomes an extension of the executive and legislative branches. Well, I think at some point we've forgotten about that because we have a lot of no count judges. The long tail of appointments, because judges serve for life, a president's influence can last for decades, which is something we've been living through. This creates a judicial legacy that can remain in power long after the voters have removed the party that appointed them. Legislating from the bench. This is the core of my concern. See how it says it? This is the core of your concern. Talking about me. They know who we voted for because they have it all. That's right, Miss Kim. That is absolutely right. It is designed not to turn on a dime. Years of planning to fine tune. That's right, James. This is my core of my concern. When courts use the Constitution to invalidate laws passed by elected representatives, or conversely refuse to invalidate actions that citizens believe are unconstitutional, they are seen as rewriting the Constitution. This leads to the perception that the Constitution is not a stable document, but a tool used by the old guard to dictate policy. We have way too much case law going on and not enough constitutional law. I don't care what the judge did in the other county based off of how he felt. I want the judge to do what the fuck he's supposed to do based off of facts. We have that in Blount County. The black robe system here, a boo-hoo, loves how they can operate from their feelings and not from fucking fact. The legislative disconnect. While judges are appointed, members of Congress are elected. Yet the perception remains that they, too, are divorced from the will of the people. It's not a perception. The donor class versus the electorate. A frequent argument is that the lobbying industrial complex creates a layer of influence that filters out the needs of the average citizen. That is not an argument. That is fact. If legislators' primary incentive for re-election is fundraising rather than constituent satisfaction, the legislative process ceases to be the reflection of the people's will. Ask Blount County about that. Careerism and incumbency. Incumbency. The structural advantage of being an incumbent. Name, recognition, fundraising networks, party support, can create a class of representatives that is remarkably resistant to being removed, even when the approval ratings are low. This limits the corrective mechanisms of the ballot box. Got that shit going on in Blount County. Got that stuff going on legislatively in Tennessee. And guess what? We got it going on federally in the United States of America. And how does that work? Well, it works real well at the community level. And when you get good at fine tuning it, you get your butt at the legislative level, and at least in our state. And if you get real good, like Tim Burchett, what's he going to do next? I think he's got a bigger plan in design. He's getting himself out there. He's talking about a lot of aliens. He's on these podcasts, my podcasts that I watch. He's out there. Yeah, he's out there. At the moment he's central casting. So either Trump is fixing to dismiss him, or he thinks he's going to be another Ron DeSantis. And I got news for him. Just don't think it's going to fit the Ron DeSantis. I don't think he's ever going to be anything. I don't think he's ever going to be. I don't know. We'll just leave it at that. But the careerism and the incumbency, he falls right in line with that. The subversion argument, interpretative power. The Constitution relies on interpretation. Because the document is relatively short and written in the 18th century language, its meaning of modern context is almost entirely determined by the people currently in power: judges, politicians, bureaucrats. If the people in power hold a view of the Constitution that fundamentally differs from the people they represent, they effectively have the power to create a new Constitution without ever needing to go through the formal amendment process. Article 10. Original view argues the subversion happens when judges interpret the Constitution based on modern values rather than the original intent of the founders. And the living Constitution view argues the subversion happens when judges adhere to outdated interpretations that prevent the government from addressing modern challenges. Both sides argue the other is subverting the document. The common ground is that the power of the interpretation is currently a weaponized political asset. He wants Marsh's spot. Why this creates a course correction. The scenario I'm describing, whereas the system is perceived as being captured. Do you think the system in our country has been captured? By forces outside the electoral control. It is exactly why constitutional systems face periods of high volatility. The structural capture theory. If the people believe the courts and the legislation are effectively owned by foreign establishments or special interests, the institutional safeguards like elections or lawsuits look less like checks and balances and more like obstruction. We got that going on? Blackburn is central casting too. Absolutely. The Black's Law Dictionary, huh? Hag. Let's see. The executive as the last resort. This is where the previous points about the administrative actions come into full focus. In a system where the legislature is perceived as unresponsive and the judiciary is perceived as ideologically compromised, the executive branch often becomes the only branch capable of acting with speed and force required to reset the system. The constitutional tension. The founders feared exactly this outcome. They called it tyranny of the minority or factionalism. They tried to prevent it through the separation of powers. The paradox we are facing today is that the tools designed to prevent tyranny, separations of powers, are currently being blamed for enabling it. Gridlock, capture, and lack of accountability. When a significant portion of the population believes the system has been captured by interests hostile to self-governance, the debate is no longer about law in the traditional sense, but about restoration of the republic. Given my view that the current courts and legislators have been shaped against the will of the people, do you agree with that statement? Do you see the current course correction by the executive branch as a temporary fix? Or do I believe that the entire system needs a fundamental structure redesigned to prevent this capture from happening again? How do we do that? The components of fixing the system. Those who advocate for the system course correction to restore trust in elections generally focus on three specific areas of reform. How did AI help me figure out with the people to do a course correction to get us closer back to constitutionality? Fix the elections. These proposals aim to move the system away from decentralized OPEC practices toward a standardized model that prioritizes verification over convenience. Standardized verification. Proponents argue that the patchwork of state level rules creates vulnerabilities. Reforms in this area focus on universal voter ID requirements, proof of citizenship, and the aggressive cleaning of voter rolls to ensure only legal, eligible citizens are casting ballots. Now, to me, that's common sense. Why is the Senate and Congress arguing about that? Because they lose that illegal voting base that they have. Technological and procedural transparency. This involves replacing black box systems. Advocates push for hand-marked paper ballots, open source code for any electronic tabulators, and the immediate public availability of cast vote records. The goal is to make sure that the system's verifiable by any citizen rather than trusting the experts or private companies to report the numbers. And I'm so over the fucking news telling us who wins these elections. Yeah, they say they're getting the information from the election committees. I don't believe that. They're getting information passed down to them, and the election committees are doing their best to match the votes that are needed to make sure that when the media comes out and says that it's true. Scrappy Dog says the U.S. corporation needs to be abolished and we need to get back to the 1791 Constitution. What he said. There's a growing movement to challenge the authority of local election officials and secretaries of state who have historically held the power to unilaterally certify results, the good old boy system. Reformers want to see a return to citizen-led audits where local communities have a legal mandated right to inspect, recount, and verify the physical ballots before they are ever aggregated into a statewide total. What we are forgetting is we have that right. They tell us that we don't. They tell us that to put all these things in place to make it hard. Term limits. You talk about term limits in Blount County? Every fucking commissioner, there's 21 of them, will throw a fit. Oh, term limit. Oh, don't say term limit. That's a bad word. It's a bad word. It's not a bad word. You talk to them off and out of the way, they all talk about how they don't want to be doing this for forever. There's a few there that do, but for the most part, no. They don't want to run on term limits. They tell you that running on term limits is detrimental to their campaign. It's a lie. They know it's not. What it does is it holds them accountable. That's what it does. Lennon said it didn't matter who votes, who counts the votes, that counts. And so did Joe Biden. Let's see. Remember the purple finger Iraqis. Elections done in one day. One day. The structural hurdle, federalism. The reason this is so difficult and why it feels like it's an insurmountable wall to many, because it takes away your comfort zone for a while, is the design of the U.S. Constitution itself. The founders intentionally decentralized election authority, giving states the power to run their own elections. Article 1, Section 4. The federal government tries to mandate fixes it faces an immediate constitutional challenge regarding states' rights. But again, if these people were truly duly elected, well, then that would be fact. But since I believe that they're not, then what my president is doing is something that I mandated him to do along with the other 80 million people, I believe. The consequences. This creates a scenario where the state that is perceived to have the broken elections cannot easily be forced to reform by federal government, leading to the perception of two Americas, one that honors integrity of the vote and one that is viewed as compromised. What happened in Fulton County, Georgia? What did they do there? And when President Trump got a hold of, what's his dick? That's the governor out there. What'd he do? What'd he do? He did just what that talked about right there. Creates a scenario where the state that is perceived to have broken the election cannot be easily forced to reform by the federal government. Go back to the original nature of the position. It was considered a civic duty and hold no monetary recompense. I get that's amazing. Again, Scrappy old dog, old Scrappy dog is right. I noted that if proven to be fact that the administration would be correct in its action, talking about if all these things were real that I talk about. This is the crux of the argument of the energetic executive response. If the electoral mechanism, the one only peacefully way to transfer power, is deemed non-functional, then the social contract is essentially voided. In such scenario, political actors would conclude that the institutional adherence is actually institutional suicide. If you believe the system is already working against you, then the standard rules of governments are no longer binding. Did you hear that? And the only constitutional path is to act outside of the broken institution to force it to reset. The Constitution talks about if the government was too big, that it was our authority to reduce the size of government, to reset it. Our authority. The challenge, as history has shown, is that once a government decides it has the authority to fix the system from the top down, it defines the perimeters of legitimacy for the entire nation. It places the burden of ensuring a fair republic entirely on the shoulders of the current administration. That right there. Fulton County was just involved with the electric company that supplies them, have told them that they are redirecting the power to a new AI data center. Yeah, I read some about that too. Yeah, we're going to get into that. I think next Thursday I'm going to do some more digging into the AI centers because I think there's a bunch of them. We just don't realize how many there are, you know. So I think that our country right now, the Constitution has been usurped. These elected officials that are in D.C., whether they have a D, an R, or an I, whether they say Congress, Senate, anybody that's a part of an entity that was put into position by any one of these people, including judges, and this is at the state level and at the community level, your local level, all three, federal, local, state. They're all illegitimate. And I believe that the president knows that. And I believe because he knows that, this is why he acts the way that he does when he comes up with the 2026 National Defensive Strategy, when he's doing the work that other presidents should have done before him. Iran. Yeah, things suck right now economically for sure. And I don't know, just to be honest with you, if it's going to get any better. But I have to believe that the future will be better because of this. We're going to suffer for a little while, but our kids and grandkids are going to accept the fact of that. OG Scrappy Dog says, we've got one coming here in Blount County at the Old North plant site. We're going to talk about that. We are Fulton County. Yes, Mr. Ed says Fulton County. We're not going to talk about Blount County stuff like that tonight, but definitely on Blount County Breakdown on Tuesday for sure about the Alcoa thing. But AI centers as a whole is definitely a caught up thing, and I would love to talk about that. And so on and so forth. So let me find here real quick this, Prometheus Action. Susan and her good friend, um, whose name has escaped me, they do a fantastic job. Let's see, that's why they're destroying our dams and our little river. Yeah, man, I believe that. Yep. There's some stuff. Yep. So, absolutely. Oh, all right. This is Susan Kokinda in the Monday Brief, and she goes over everything currently with the Trump. Um. Anyway, you all have seen it. Let's see, Frankie Woody. Things might be a little on the rough side economically right now, Brian, but it beats the alternative of being nuked off the face of the earth. Trump is doing what he needs to, as he has to. Hang in there. No. I agree with everything. Did you just jump in the show and see the last bit of the section of what I was talking about with the economics? I mean, no. I agree with what's going on, Woody. Rewind it a little bit and listen to what I was saying, because that's not what I mean. I have no fear. How did you put that? Let's see. Being better than nuked out. Yeah. Trump's fixing things that should have been done years ago. You know what I'm saying? So, but anyway, listen to this part right here. This is the Monday Brief. Gotta be able to hear it though.
President Trump is flying to China this week. But if you want to understand what is really going on, you need to pay very close attention to what Russian President Putin just said. We started working with our major partners and friends, primarily with our friends from the People's Republic of China, India, and some other nations, including the U.S. administration. We simply presented our friends, colleagues, and partners with a picture of what the situation could develop into. Now, Putin was referring to security concerns around Victory Day, but his list of Russia's partners and friends, China, India, and the United States, tells you everything about why the empire had to convene a big anti-Trump war council in Mark Carney's Canada this past weekend, headlined by top Soros and Obama operatives. One of them, Patrick Gaspard, said this.
I think interregnum is the perfect word to use, Senator, because the death of a king is a shocking and traumatic moment, right? The death of the old model here of the world is shocking and traumatic. What do we all need to be doing in our spaces that prepares us for this moment after the interregnum?
Now, that's a man who served as both Obama's political campaign director and as the head of Soros's Open Society Foundation, admitting that the old model of the world is dead, and he and Mark Carney are trying to rally the forces for a hoped-for world after Donald Trump. Now, a lot of the MAGA sphere was focused on that Toronto meeting. There are posts of Obama being greeted by Carney and pictures of Alex Soros attending the conference. The coverage is everywhere. But what they're missing is this. Carney, Obama, and Soros are not operating from a position of strength. They're scrambling to come up with a fallback plan, while Donald Trump and the other countries are showing the world that sovereign nations can defeat empires. I'm Susan Kokinda, and I've known for decades that the battle lines are not what you've been told. It's not right versus left or capitalist versus communists, but it's an extension of the fight we started 250 years ago. And that's why Promethean Action has been able to identify what President Trump is doing better than anyone else, and why you should hit those like, share, and subscribe buttons. So here's what I'm going to cover today. First, I'm going to take you behind the scenes in Toronto and look at what the Carney Doctrine is all about. Second, I'm going to look at the new global configuration that the Carney Doctrine is trying to stop. And third, how this plays out in the U.S. and what it's going to mean for the midterms. So this weekend, the leadership of let's call it the North American franchise of the British Empire, gathered in Toronto for the Global Progress Action Summit. Barack Obama flew up on Friday. He gave a closed-door address to the kickoff gala banquet. But the next day, the entire Obama-Soros network, minus Obama himself, was in full attendance in strategy sessions under the banner of the Center for American Progress and Canada 2020. Now, this comes less than a week after Mark Carney addressed over 40 European and Anglosphere nations about the need to create a new rules-based order minus Donald Trump's United States. The keynote in Toronto was delivered by Neera Tanden. She's the head of the Center for American Progress, who served Clinton, Obama, and Biden. She was introduced as leading, quote, the opposition in the United States. And here's what she, as the head of the opposition, had to say.
And in this past year, Prime Minister Carney has shown the world that there is a path forward, that it's possible to stand up to authoritarianism, but also deliver on the potential of progressive policies, ideas, and values. And in this room, we represent 40 countries, yet we face many of the same challenges in a growing affordability crisis and the rise of right-wing populism and authoritarianism.
So what is this new path forward that they're rallying around? At the summit, Mark Carney's foreign minister called it the Carney Doctrine and described it as principled pragmatism. Translated into plain English, that means keeping all the structures of globalism in place: free trade, the green agenda, NATO, unchecked immigration, and forever wars, but face the fact that broad layers of the population have had it with the woke and crazy policies of the hard radical left and the economic impact of those globalist policies. So instead, their strategy: blow smoke in their eyes and act like you care about their economic well-being. I think some of them read the writing on the wall after Keir Starmer's epic defeat in Britain last week. Now, the American face of this rebrand at the conference was Senator Alyssa Slotkin from Michigan, who comes from that peculiar class of CIA-spawned Democrats, and former Biden Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. Both are being groomed by the Obama-Soros networks as 2028 presidential prospects. So here's Slotkin echoing Carney in American terms.
I think the thing that I think is very important is we're never going to go back to the way the world was. If the old system is no longer working, but we're in this interregnum reorganization, what does it look like when we come through the tunnel? And I would offer that what to me is very fundamentally important is that while ideals that many of us, myself included, were trained on, we have to deliver for our public. Our foreign policies have to serve the economic well-being of our countries. And if people can't see the connection between our engagement abroad and what it does for them back home, if they don't understand that in their bones, we got a problem.
They are admitting they have a problem. Now, look at who isn't admitting that. Look at who was not at the summit. AOC, Hakeem Jeffries, Gavin Newsom, and their ilk. Those are the lemmings still running off the cliff of the old narrative. CAP is positioning itself as the real opposition to Donald Trump, and they're saying it out loud. Now, who's actually running this? They all come from the Obama, Biden, Soros networks. Look at Gaspar, the man you just heard called Trump's presidency an interregnum. He was Obama's national political director in 2008. Then he became the director of the White House Office of Political Affairs. And then Soros tapped him personally to run the Open Society Foundations. Now he's at CAP moderating these summits. And CAP, Center for American Progress, itself is the Democratic Party's operational headquarters between administrations. It was launched by John Podesta, who's the closest thing that the Democratic establishment has to a permanent staff director. He was Bill Clinton's chief of staff, Obama's counselor, Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign chairman, and Biden's climate spending czar. So CAP has also internationalized itself through these global progress action summits. A previous summit was keynoted by Tony Blair. In 2024, the summit was embedded inside the Democratic National Convention. And in 2025, the whole Anglosphere came together for the summit, with Canada, Britain, and Australia sending their prime ministers. So this has been a multi-year running political coordination operation with direct pipelines to the Obama networks, the Soros networks, and the British through Tony Blair and a variety of other prime ministers. And it just landed in Canada under the Carney Doctrine. Now, watch this group, because it is easy to stay focused on the crazies in the Democratic Party. But these are the people who are being groomed to try and run things at the highest levels of the empire. And this is what Promethean Action does. We look behind the headlines and the clickbait, and we expose the higher level strategic and deeper historical forces at play. So sign up for our free newsletter, stay in touch. The link is in the description. Now, while Carney and his friends are trying to regroup, President Trump and his partners are driving forward with a new strategic map of the world. Let's go back to Putin's remarks about his friends and partners and what's going on between the three superpowers. On May 9th, President Putin announced a pending significant oil and gas deal with China. Then, on May 14th, President Trump is traveling to China, and it's now being reported that Putin may travel to China very shortly thereafter. Now, the neocons will look at this from the old geopolitical playbook. They're going to say Russia and China are ganging up against the United States. Well, that's not how Trump or Putin see it. Putin made that clear by describing his friends and partners. And here's how Donald Trump described his relationship to China in an interview yesterday.
My relationship is very good with President Xi. I don't know the other leaders, but President Xi is a good man, smart man, loves China. And I look forward to being there. We did this once before, and it was amazing. It's going to be I think it's going to be an amazing trip.
Now, also, I want you to take note of the context of Putin's remarks about his partners. They came in the context of Victory Day. Victory Day marks the 81st anniversary of the end of World War II. This is the last time the United States and Russia and China were allied with each other against fascism. And for Russia, this celebration is always massive and deeply emotional because 26 million Russians died in that war. But in this 21st century, American presidents have ignored Victory Day until Donald Trump. Apparently, celebrating our shared alliance with Russia and China against fascism didn't fit into the post-war narrative established by Winston Churchill when he gave his Iron Curtain speech in 1946. But Donald Trump has broken with that post-war narrative, and he issued his first Victory Day proclamation in 2025, and then he did it again last week. And now he's heading to China to talk to Xi, work through trade differences, and deepen the relationship. It's no wonder that the Obama-Soros networks are scrambling for a reset of their own. Donald Trump is dismantling the geopolitical architecture of the post-war period that kept the United States in permanent conflict with Russia and China, and also kept the Mideast in perpetual turmoil. Now, let's go back to Toronto and look at it from the American domestic standpoint. Remember how Patrick Gaspar and others described the Trump presidency as an interregnum, a temporary gap before the old order returns? Their desperate wish is that they can dislodge or cripple him through a Democrat midterm victory. But as Barbara covered on Wednesday, those hopes took several really big body blows last week, with both the U.S. Supreme Court and the Virginia Supreme Court delivering decisions on redistricting that makes a midterm path significantly harder for the Democrats. Here's a New York Times headline, which captures the state of mind. A private call reveals Democrats' desperation over tossing of map. So the Obama-Soros network now knows they've got to work even harder. And that means trying somehow to win back the working class. Listen to how CAP's Neera Tanden framed it in Toronto.
I hope in your countries, people see what's happening in the United States and again recognize that this championship, this idea that the far right champions the working class is actually a failure.
a failure. That's what they want you to believe. They need you to not see what Trump is actually doing for the working class. That his tariff policies, his anti-monopoly push, and his credit for industry framework are creating a genuine economic revolution. They need people to stay in the world of being losers and victims, rather than seeing the profound changes taking place in our economy right now and what that means for the future. This is exactly where Promethean action comes in. It's our job to make clear the depth of that economic revolution and to cut through the noise. And we did just that with our new pamphlet, which you can get by going to the Promethean Action website and clicking on the top banner. We show you that this administration has challenged the imperial system by reviving the American system of economics, and we show you the impact it is already having in terms of manufacturing, energy independence, and genuine and durable growth. So go over to the Promethean Action website, check out that pamphlet. This has been your Monday Brief. Thanks for watching.
There we are. I don't know what happened. It was trying not to add me back to the stage. Promethean action. That lady Susan Cooking. I could see me like that in 20 more years. Except on the man side, not the lady side. She does a fantastic job. Her other friend Barbara. They both do like a small podcast. They do all this research, and they're really interesting. And so I find them pretty accurate in what they talk about, and very interesting. She just brings a whole new perspective to I don't know, to way that the world operates, and how we live in an alternate reality of that. So very cool. Let me see. I got if I can find it quickly. Oh man, did you see that? Y'all didn't see that. Anyway, I appreciate the chat. That article I was reading earlier was something that I created. In gosh, what was I doing? Oh, yeah. Let me do this. Sorry, guys, but I created that. I asked the questions. I brought up let me see articles. When it was arguing with me, trying to tell me the AI was basically trying to tell me that the way that I was thinking was incorrect. But then and the fantastic thing is you can bring up stuff and you pull it on the page, and it kind of splits the screen like 50-50. And so you got what you're doing right here, and then you're speaking with AI right there. And once it sees that it made the incorrect answer there, and you could show it, well, then it redirects its thought process and goes off into the direction that you're not necessarily telling. All this began, this article all began, or this op-ed all began because I wanted to know how much the military was spending, like on individual bases. And so I learned a lot. And so at the beginning of the article, it talks about, that we have 750 military bases. 600 of them are out there that we know of, like the names. And then there's like 150 or more that we're not aware of, type thing. So, and when I asked how it broke it down, it was telling me that it would be hard to break it down in a defense budget that ranges anywhere from $50 to $80 billion annually, based on the fact that it wasn't just about a military base. You had housing, troops, infrastructure, all kinds of other things that just in my mind I wasn't thinking about. So as it went through that, I thought that was cool. So then it led me down the direction of, who's in charge of these budgets the way that they are. Congress has the power of the purse, and so on and so forth. And so it turned out to be like 30 pages, 30-page PDF. But it's pretty accurate. And so anyway, I appreciate all the back and forth, the communication. Yeah, the black ops. They do a lot of black ops. We look, honest to God, we have lived in an alternate reality. We do truly live in the greatest country in the world. We have a constitution that was given to us, not by man, but by God. Inalienable rights, not the alien rights, inalienable rights. And like I said, the Constitution should be written all over us, like, transparently. So when an elected official sees us, that's what they see. They see us with our God-given rights ingrained into who we are, and so they know that when they're up there doing things that are unconstitutional and against the will of the people, that they know that's exactly what they're doing, and so I just liked it. It worked out well, and so anytime that we can challenge everything when it comes to government, that's the right process. And you just have to do it smart. You can't show up with an attitude. You can't act like Brian Riley. You can't show up with an attitude, running your mouth, cussing, raising hell, that kind of thing. Because then nobody wants to talk to you, But if you act like this guy that's sitting in the seat of the podcast, then maybe somebody will talk to you a little bit and answer questions that you want to ask. But ultimately, I think that we need to. Oh, I was doing something. Fix our elections collectively. Okay, so I have to do this again. All right. I know you guys can't see everything that's going on behind the scenes, but that's just the way it is. Let's see. Watch history. Yes, right here. Uh-oh. Okay. This is DEFCON 0. They're just a group of guys like me on Badlands Media. Some of you guys may know who they are, some of you may not. But it's about 12 minutes long altogether. And but it's just listen to it. It's really interesting. Remember the outline I was talking about, how things came into this order? This is the breakdown. Their opinion of the breakdown, which I think is pretty accurate.
The dude is literally talking about his guys, the Legion, his guys that are in the apparatuses right now. That is insane, bro. He's literally saying, I know it's speculation, but it's educated speculation. He's literally telling Cash, my guys are telling me everything you guys are doing.
That's right. This is a warning. This is a warning that he is putting out there to Trump. We have all of our guys already in place. Now, it could be a ruse because he's scared because he's going to get indicted, or he could be serious. Well, something happened today. James O'Keefe put out 2 videos. President Trump's special assistant on the White House Domestic Policy Council came out and admits that that they make decisions based on what feels like a good idea and said there's no cost benefit, and says that basically Trump isn't even acknowledged in any of the decision makings, that Susie Wiles basically makes all the decisions. And both of them came out and said that we need to get rid of Trump. And they're both obviously on leave today, but that's just inside the White House. Okay. We're talking about 100,000 people in the DOJ, 100,000 people within the CIA.
Well, what else did Cash come out and say this week? that there are reporters and journalists that are going to get depositioned.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing. If you're getting subpoenaed for a deposition, they already know it was a leak operation. And it's either you're going to cooperate or you're going to face charges. And you're seeing people that are arguing, well, this is, as a matter of fact, what's his name from the Seditious Sticks, Mark Kelly. Came out and said, this is an attack on the First Amendment. They said, no, it's not, bro.
When you're a senator when you're a senator who has a security clearance on the Intel committee, and you're getting the information on U.S. armaments and what we have and what we don't have, and you go on the news media, that's not the First Amendment.
Hell no, that's not First Amendment. That's an issue of national security. And he knows it. He knows that he's getting these passes because they're in the appeals process with the first charge that they try to dump on him. And that gives him these confidence. And that goes back to the statement Brennan just said with the judges and the attorney generals. These guys know. And that's why one of the big markers, and we just had that marker again this week, that I told people this was early to mid last year, is, well, when's the arrest? When are the arrests coming? I said, when you start to see judges get arrested, resign, investigated, or leave through some other means, then you know the arrests are coming because they're taking control of the judicial side of everything that's happening.
Well, that already happened in Virginia. I mean, you pointed this out a few weeks ago after the referendum vote in Virginia, and you were spot on. You said it was a setup. Why did they allow them to use mail-in ballots to steal the referendum vote? Midnight, 64,000 ballots came in, all yeses for the referendum. Why did they allow that to happen? It was the setup. They observed the whole damn thing. But not only that, is they already had everything in play. Why? The next day, a federal judge comes out and puts a stop on an injunction on the referendum. The attorney general files. The Virginia Supreme Court comes out and says, no, this is upheld. So what happens then? They appeal again. It goes to the Supreme Court. SCOTUS says, nope, not happening. So what happens now? The attorney general goes out and then does it again, but to the wrong Supreme Court. In other words, the referendum is already done. It's already shut down. At the same time that week, the SCOTUS came out and they basically outlawed gerrymandering, which means that all of these states have to be redistricted. We're seeing Missouri, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Texas, dude, I don't think people understand how much winning this actually is, how significant all of this is.
That you want to talk about a red wave? That's a red tsunami.
There it is.
That's a tsunami, bro. I wish I had one of the somebody did an AI rendition of what the new maps will look like absent the gerrymandering, and I'm like, holy shit.
So that's this, and people are like, well, where's the accountability? Okay, since I gotta skip over the COVID stuff, but we're gonna go in. So Missouri Supreme Court obviously redistricting. South Carolina Supreme Court redistricting happening. Here's one for you. Michigan Dominion, game over. You have Trump reposting. Dominion forensic images confirmed beyond a shadow of a doubt that the anonymous user logged into the election management system remotely from Antrim Counties, Michigan on November 5th, 2020, and tampered with the database on the 2020 election. You have Dominion CEO under oath in a deposition stating that, yes, Serbia and Venezuela both had access to Dominion voting machines. You have Susie Wiles last week saying that you're going to probably come out and find out that Donald Trump actually won some of these states, right? Imagine if somehow DNI Tulsi Gabbard, who is running the task force on election integrity, investigating the 2020 election fraud, is able to connect this deposition to Coomer back to the backdoor access they discovered in the Puerto Rico's Dominion machines and in the Michigan's machines. It's going to be huge. So that's coming. And we said, guys, that's going to come right before the election. Probably in the summer time frame, you're going to see that come about when you're going to have that. And I've heard there's a few more election arrests that are going to come, but I don't think they're going to be very significant. How about this one? Democrat state assembly candidate kicked off the primary ballot after 90% of her 5,258 total signatures were invalidated by the city board of elections. She's Muslim. How about this one? The FBI is officially investigating the Wisconsin 2020 election. FBI has started an investigation of Wisconsin's 2020 election. Sources told the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel the investigation is only in a preliminary phase and is focused on vetting previous complaints. No ballots have been seized yet, as per sources. So imagine this, guys. Right now, you have grand jury that have subpoenaed and had the FBI raid in Fulton County, Georgia. You have FBI investigating Wisconsin 2020. You had the subpoenas that were issued to Maricopa County, probably the same grand jury as Georgia. And I'm assuming the one in Wisconsin is the same grand jury. Puerto Rico, Dominion machines were seized by Tulsi Gabbard last August. What's up next? Colorado, Pennsylvania, Minnesota, Michigan, New York are on deck. This is all going to begin to start rolling out. And what you're going to see is the grand conspiracy begin to form. Listen to this one. 1.8 million ghost votes identified across 353 counties in 29 states. 8 entire states have voter registration exceeding 100% of eligible voting age citizens statewide in the 2020 election. Alaska, Colorado, Maine, Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, Rhode Island, Vermont. Voter rolls contain massive inaccuracies, including potential dead, moved, or ineligible registrants. Why was it so important for the Democrats to push the 2020 census to include all the illegal immigrants? Because that gives them a preliminary count of how many voter rolls that they're going to have and for the voting analytics that are used. So you have that. Ohio is facing mass calls for federal investigation at the county's second largest Somali hotbed. Okay. Franklin and Columbus are seeing massive Medicare fraud. So they import them for the votes and then they pay them off through all this fraud. But here's an interesting one, Alpha. You're going to love this one. Remember last week we talked about the Maine governor?
I do.
Remember Maine? So if people don't go, if you go back like 3 months ago, you're going to hear Alpha say, watch Maine. Down there. Guarantee it. Because we were waiting for this one. Maine governor, a week and a half ago, dropped out of the race because she has no money. She's the incumbent. She's dropped out of the race. The White House announces that fraud czar J.P. Vance is headed to Maine in relation to fraud investigations. The state's Democrat Governor Janet Mills has been hiding data that could unveil massive fraud.
We're just really good at guessing, Josh.
Well, this is the other part I want to say is this is all going to happen at the same, like people are like, accountability.
It is a choke point that it's coming to.
Drip, flood. We're not at flood yet, guys. Now this is interesting. So what do we got here? So,
well, let me drop a Rumble ad because I know Jessica's working hard there in the back, and so she should throw me a little thumbs. There it is, and we will download the Rumble. Actually, saying use the Rumble wallet, send a rant. We are watching.
To Hillary Clinton's pay-for-play, the selling of SAP programs, to Fast and Furious, Benghazi, Uranium One, and then moving forward, you go into the 2016 Mueller investigation, Impeachment 1, Impeachment 2, the 2018 midterm elections, COVID-19, 2020 stolen election, assassination attempts, Mar-a-Lago raid. All of this is interrelated and interconnected. It's one grand conspiracy, as Alpha says, Rico. Okay. So what you're seeing right now is you're seeing various different indications all across the board of DOJ investigations. It all seems separate, but are really part of a grand conspiracy. What are we seeing? Well, you have the Senate that is doing an investigation into Hillary Clinton's pay-for-play. They are reopening that. The DOJ, they subpoenaed documents from that. They released those. The DOJ is now potentially even reopening that because of state secrets that were disclosed within Hillary Clinton's email file, specifically within the Wiener laptop. So that is one thing. So that's going backwards. Okay, now we're going into 2016. This is the 2016 to 2017 intelligence community assessment where the Fort Pierce grand jury is impaneled investigating John Brennan. Now, James Comey just got indicted, but they're saying that James Comey's probably going to face other charges other than what the 8647 charge is on that. I wonder what that's going to be. It's probably with the grand jury that is investigating John Brennan as well, because James Comey was directly involved in all this. But that is the implication of Obama. So if anybody wants to look at that grand jury, think of FISA-gate, because that's what really that is about. And the focus is on John Brennan, but there's massive amounts of co-conspirators that play into that situation. Okay, so now you're in 2016, 2017. Well, what happens in 2018? And by the way, you have to go back to 2016, July timeframe. Lenny Bernardo to Open Society Foundation. There's an email that was declassified last June by Tulsi Gabbard, the DNI. And in the email was from the Open Society Foundation's executive director, Lenny Bernardo, and he was talking about Julianne Smith, who was Hillary Clinton's foreign policy advisor for her campaign, stating that HRC has agreed to move forth with the Russian smear campaign on Donald Trump. And then in the email, Lenny Bernardo is explaining this to another Open Society members and says that we don't have the information right now, but we're going to have Threat Connect and CrowdStrike, two companies that we work with, get this for us. And if you remember, CrowdStrike was the one company that was operating within the DNC, the IT company. Okay, now you fast forward 2018. 2018, what happens is George Soros goes out there and funds governors, secretary of states, and attorney generals across the board in massive blue states, in red states, to get this blue wave passed in 2018. In Colorado, I lived in a red county, and that county went completely 100% blue, which was unheard of. And this happened all across the United States. Why? Because of George Soros' bucks, because of the deep state's reach. Now, why did they want those specific people in place? Well, that would make more sense when you get into 2008, 2020, but we'll get into that in a second. 2019 comes. In 2019, you have Trump's perfect phone call with President Zelensky of Ukraine. The perfect phone call, Trump says, President Zelensky, do you have the server? You know, Burisma, CrowdStrike. I'd like to have my DOJ take a look at it. Why was that so important? Why did Eric Cimarella, who happened to be the 2014 CIA operative that worked with Victoria Nuland to secure funding for the Maidan massacre in Ukraine to topple the Ukrainian government? Why did Alexander Vindman, the other Ukrainian national who moved here as a kid and had a green card, why did they blow the whistle? Why did they just got, by the way, people didn't know, Eric Cimarella got indicted, along with the former ICIG, just got indicted 2 weeks ago. That's huge, okay? Because that's pertaining to this part right there. They did it because they knew if Trump got that server that he was talking about, CrowdStrike, Burisma, yeah, that's the same company that Hunter Biden was on the board of directors for. If they got that server, it would be over for them. So they went out there and they tried to take down Trump with the second impeachment, and that came through illegal whistleblower procedures, which those guys were just indicted for. So what happens? They didn't stop them then. So now you go into 2020 and you have COVID. COVID gets released, and Anthony Fauci. So what you have is September 2019, Trump signs an executive order authorizing the creation of mRNA vaccines. This is a month and a half prior to event 201 with Johns Hopkins University, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the WHO, of where they have a novel coronavirus that spreads from a wet lab in Brazil, and they have to develop an mRNA vaccine. It's a global exercise. So he signs the executive order in September, and then COVID hits in late December, early January of 2020. And this is utilized, and here's the big key part, this is utilized to bring about mail-in voting, mail-in ballots across the board in every single state. And how do they do this? The attorney generals and the secretary of states. The secretary of states are in charge of state elections. They came out, they changed the rules, they sent it to the attorney general for approval. The attorney general approved it. Mail-in ballots went all the way out there. They stole the election. What happens after? The majority of those states, they took those cases to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court's rule that the attorney general and the secretary of state do not have the power and authority to change the laws passed by the state assemblies, the state houses. And so therefore they were unconstitutional changes. That's why George Soros needed them there in 2018. So what happens? Well, they steal the election. Trump leaves office. You have them go and raid Mar-a-Lago 3 months later. Why did they raid Mar-a-Lago? On January 17th, 2021, Donald Trump received the redacted and declassified version of Crossfire Hurricane, of FISA-Gate, of all the documents in a binder called the FISA-Gate binder. This was a red binder. If anybody remembers us talking about the red binder. He took it with him when he left the White House. The day that the Biden administration came in, Gina Haspel reclassified it. And then they said, oh, Donald Trump's in possession of state secrets and classified material. How do they know that? Because they're the ones that fucking reclassified it after he declassified it twice publicly. September 12th, 2020 and December 20th, 2020 on Twitter, the post, I hereby declassify all information pertaining to the Crossfire Hurricane, Crossfire Razor, and the Hillary Clinton email investigation. Same tweet, 2 different times. And they reclassified it almost like he knew it was going to happen. That caused the Mar-a-Lago raid, obviously, which produced a massive amount of lawsuits and trials and all this stuff, Trump to get indicted, all of this good stuff, which we're finding out now is all bullshit. We're finding out now is nothing more than weaponization of the DOJ. So what do? They try to assassinate him 3 freaking times, and they can't stop this guy. Now, here's the key to put it all together. It is all coming out right now. You have the 2020 election fraud. You have COVID-19 fraud. You have the ICA 2016-17 ICA coming out. You're going to hear stuff about the Crooks assassination. That's going to be coming out here in the next few months. But this is what I want to point to right here, because remember, this is a string that you begin to pull and it all begins to unravel.
Before you continue on, you had Devin Nunes that goes on and does an interview a few days ago, and he hints towards that Mar-a-Lago raid and what you're talking about with that ICA report. So I want to play this short clip. It's under 90 seconds. So let me bring up, and I don't know if you've seen.
All right. You can finish watching. That's DEFCON 0. That is, if you want to finish what's left of it's episode 43 called Massey's Cow Money. But he does a fantastic job. You heard his breakdown. He knows it pretty well because he says it. It's not like he's reading it from somewhere, he's carrying on with it pretty well. So, all right. With that being said, guys, I don't have anything else, although I have run my mouth long enough, apparently, huh? Let me see here. Okay. So, we just want to say thank you. I'll play a little bit of People on the Porch. 2 hours and 13 minutes. I don't normally go this long, but since it was Friday and there's nothing else to do. Oh, if you're a big Vols baseball thing, we're Oklahoma. We're up 5-3 in the bottom of the 7th. But it's in rain delay. Lady Vols won today and move on. Yeah, Kim, they're pretty good, ain't they? I like Josh and Alpha for sure, man. They're pretty good. He does a fantastic job there, so yeah, like me some DEFCON 0. So anyway, guys, I appreciate everything. All the feedback, all the comments. If you liked it, thank you. That good stuff like that. So, man, have a good weekend. I'm trying to think. I don't know. I might go hit some golf balls. It's supposed to be beautiful. Anyway, peace out.
My heart, pumping all day long, getting me to morning when darkness comes. My heart, ooh.
I'm gonna pick my bones up and walk through the storm I made. I'm gonna head on home before it